What's happening, DFF Army? Back again, but not for a film room. Today I'm going to be reviewing a 4-round rookie mock draft. If you don't know, I have a podcast I do called Dynasty Underdog, and we have a Discord. Feel free to hop in there, links in the description. And I decided to get everybody together just to do a quick rookie mock draft. We've created a bunch of listener leagues for the listeners of the podcast. So a bunch of these folks are part of the Discord, and I tossed in a link and they decided to join, and we did a rookie mock. I wanted to review some of the picks and give y'all my thoughts. And I thought it was just a good teaser for your upcoming drafts. It's something you can look at that might give you an idea of what you may see, but also obviously I'll give you my thoughts on what I thought should and shouldn't happen. So hopefully you can take something away from that. So let's open up the draft board. Alrighty, let's get into it. So for this mock, I took the 1.10. This is a 10-team Superflex tight end premium mock draft. Okay. So the assumption is the tight end gets 1.5 PPR. The rest are a full point per reception, right? And this is super flex, so that will push the QBs up the board. I really do like Stroud at number 2. Bijan Robinson, first pick. Obviously, really nothing to say there. CJ Stroud, second pick, first QB off the board. I dig it. I think out of all these QBs, I'm going to like him the most when it comes down to it. When we see the landing spots, I think that I'm going to like Stroud the most. I think that he has potential to be the first QB off the board. So I like that a lot. Jackson Smith and Jigba going number 3 before Bryce Young is shocking. You can actually pull up the chat here. Uriah, my co-host, he says, I should have taken a QB at 103, but JSN is the only player there that I think can be a 10-year starter in the NFL. Our buddy Textbook here says, interesting. I don't believe Richardson is foolproof, but you don't think Young has a lasting career? Just curious, as I thought he and Stroud were both essentially booked to be long-time starters. That pick 3 and 4 are interesting to me since looking at pre-draft spots, I have a few picks in different leagues at 3 and 4, was debating JSN or Young. So I'm sure a lot of people are looking at this like, how can you not take Bryce Young there? How can you not take the QB? But I think this is going to be something a lot of people struggle with in drafts in this 3-4 range here. JSN is a locked-in stud, right? There's no reason to question him. There are questions about Young and its size and whatnot. So and also QBs, we know this, they don't have the best hit rate in the NFL. It's not a sure thing that, 3 or 4 of these guys are going to work out, even 2. So there's reason to do what Uriah did. That said, he acknowledges that he probably should have went JSN. And I think later on, he acknowledges that in a real draft, he might go Young here with the value of the QB. So Bryce Young at 1.4, great pick by Matty J. No problems there. Jahmyr Gibbs here at 5 was kind of shocking to me because you have Anthony Richardson still on the board with a ton of upside, right? You have Zay Flowers, my number 3 wide receiver in this class right now. And there are obviously questions with all of these guys, but I think in a super flex draft, I don't know if I can pass up Anthony Richardson at 1.5, especially for Jahmyr Gibbs with the sub 200. Just there's some questions about his game as well. I'm not so confident that he's going to turn into Chris Johnson or something like that. And he is 15 pounds lighter than Alvin Kamara that everybody likes to comp him to. So that's not really something I'm looking to do that high in the draft with a running back, especially with this class where I think I can get one a little bit later that I like a little bit more. Jordan Addison at 1.7, great pick. I don't think you can let him fall any farther. I was a little surprised with Michael Mayer at 1.8. It's not a terrible pick. I love Michael Mayer, but I was just a little surprised because we know that tight ends, they're not really going to produce year 1. So letting him fall to the second is something I'm more willing to do. Even though I like him a lot, I do think that I'm more willing to let him fall to the second round and look for that spot to get him. And if I want to maybe jump back, I can. Obviously, we're not trading here, but that would be my idea in a real draft. At number 9, Quentin Johnston. Not really. I mean, this is definitely a pick you could see happening. And depending on DC, he could go even earlier. I mean, he could definitely be in that 1.5 range when it's all said and done. So I think this is a pretty good value pick. Zay Flowers at 110. Just can't pass my guy up here. I love what he can do. I think he's a route technician. I think he's a stud. And at wide receiver 4 at pick 10, I'd love to get him on my team because I do think he's going to get that first round draft capital. Next pick, 2.1. Very surprised Jalen Hyatt went here. I'm not a big fan. I think he's a one-trick pony. And at 2.1, just a little rich for me. 2.2 has to be one of my favorite picks here. And, in a 12-team league, this would be 112. Zach Charbonnet, love that pick. I think he has a lot of upside. I think he's the second best back in this class. And to get him that much further down the board than Jahmyr Gibbs is just great for me. Tyjae Spears, probably a little rich here at 2.3, but definitely some upside, at least pre-draft. He might not get the draft capital. That's the only issue that we could see down the road. 2.4 gets a little shaky for sure. You can just see it here, right? And I'm kind of surprised everybody let Will Levis fall past 2.4. But you see Zach Evans go there. A lot of people are pretty high on him. I know that. So you could see that happening depending on draft capital. Josh Downs goes 2.5. I think that's a fine pick there. We'll see depending on draft capital, though. He is a smaller guy, and those guys don't always work out in the NFL. Sean Tucker at 2.6 is a pretty good pick. I do think that he has some upside, but the draft could really kill his value. If he doesn't get the draft capital, you're not going to be picking him here. Dalton Kincaid, 2.7. Not surprised at this pick, and I do think this is probably where you'll see him kind of go as long as he gets the draft capital that everybody's thinking, first, second round. Will Levis, 2.8. I mean, what a steal right here. He should not be going this far. There's no way he goes this far. Even if we don't like Will Levis, we should pick him in the first round. I probably shouldn't have passed up Will Levis for Zay Flowers, but depending on how things shake out, if Will Levis falls further than we think, he could fall down the draft boards a little bit. That said, I'm just not really willing to fade QBs that much. And if I had to go back and do it in a real draft, I definitely would have picked Will Levis at 110. Devin A. Chain at 2.9. Great value here. I think he's going to get some draft capital, and I know that he's a smaller guy, but I really do like how dynamic he is. So I think 2.9 at the end of the second round, that's a good pick. Tank Bigsby, same exact thing, tons of upside. He probably should have went back where Zach Evans went. Bigsby at 210, good pick. Hendon Hooker, 3.1. I think that's a smart pick too, especially if you don't have a QB yet and you're, set at QB. You can wait and see if Hendon Hooker will fall to you. He probably won't get the first round draft capital that everybody's talking about, but second round draft capital, something like that, if he does get it, he's definitely a guy worth drafting. You don't let QBs fall. I said it about Will Levis. I'll say it about Hooker. I would let him get to the second round, though. I definitely would let Hooker get to the second round. Will Levis, you can't let him leave the first if he gets first round draft capital. You just can't, and I shouldn't have. Israel Abanikanda, solid pick in the third. I mean, once you get to the third round, you are really taking flyers. I do think taking shots on running backs is a good idea in the third round because the hit rates are so bad here for all of the positions, and then you have to factor in the scarcity of the position. So if I'm taking shots on guys, I'm taking shots on guys like, I think Roshan Johnson is probably a better pick at 3.3. Love that for Uriah. I think that he should be going ahead of Israel Abanikanda for sure. Keyshawn Butte, 3.4, a little rich for me. I'm not a big Butte fan, though. I do see the upside there, so at 3.4, why not take it? Kendre Miller, 3.5. I'm not going to hate on you for taking it. I'm not a big fan of him, but at 3.5 again, you're not wasting much value here, right? Darnell Washington, 3.6. I think this is where you're going to see him go. And I think he's going to be much more of a blocker than he is going to be a receiving tight end, somebody who's going to get you fantasy production, but he's massive. Why not take a shot, right? 3.7, Marvin Mims. I think this guy has some of the most upside in this range. I talked about him a little bit I talked about Marvin Mims a little bit on the Factory Tour with Paul Patterson, the new Dynasty show on the Dynasty Football Factory YouTube channel. Love him. Think if he gets second round draft capital, he could be a real riser, and you won't get him in this range. Rashid Rice, 3.8. I know there's a lot of buzz about him. Not my favorite guy, but I get taking him in this range. Luke Musgrave. Now we're starting to take some of the other tight ends. I think there's other tight ends that I would have taken over Musgrave, but I guess it's take your pick at this range. Personally, I like Will Mallory over guys like Musgrave. I like Laporta over Musgrave. There's a couple other guys who I would consider over Musgrave in this range. At this next pick, again, I think I would have done something different here looking at the board and the way it fell. 310, I went Tyler Scott, who I do like a lot, but he probably would have went undrafted if I didn't pick him. So I think Cedric Tillman at 4.1 is probably the steal of this draft, to be honest. I mean, maybe Will Levis, because he shouldn't go past the first round. He got picked at 2.8, but 4.1 for Cedric Tillman is just criminal. He really shouldn't go there. He's got some of the best size in this class. He does have a good profile. He was injured last year, but he's got some good production. And Jalen Hyatt going 2 rounds before him is just absolute insanity. They played on the same team, and Tillman was just a better player. The only reason Hyatt produced so much this past year was because Tillman was out. Evan Hull at 4.2 is another one of my favorite picks in this draft. I think he could have gone in the Israel Abanikanda range at 3.2. I think that if he falls into a team where he's the backup for a stud running back, he could be a riser too. All he needs is an injury to take over a backfield, in my opinion. He's a really skilled runner, and he has tons of drive. I mean, this is a guy who at the combine ran every single drill to the end zone. How can you pass that up, really? And at 4.2, love it. Max Duggan at 4.3. I don't know if Uriah was sleeping when he made this pick, but there's definitely other stuff you can do here. I would have taken almost every pick after him here, except for Jake Haener at the end there. Sam Laporta at 4.4, fine pick. I like him as a tight end. I think he could definitely be a good receiving tight end in this league. Deuce Vaughn at 4.5, love that. I mean, at this point, you're taking flyers, and Deuce Vaughn's probably one of the best flyers in this class. I talked about him in one of my YouTube shorts for Dynasty Football Factory, and I think he's really unique. He's really small, but he has super incredible production in college, and he has a really good BMI. So he's got a pretty good weight for his height, which he does lack. So I like Deuce Vaughn at 4.5. I think that if he's in the right situation, he could be a receiving type threat in the NFL, and he could be a flex type play for you. Xavier Hutchinson, he's a fine receiver. He didn't really pop off the page to me either on the film or in the spreadsheets, so I don't have any love or hate for him really. But in this range, he could end up doing something in the league. I have no problem with it. Chase Brown at 4.7, he should have gone way earlier. Like I'm talking Rashid Rice 3.8 range here, I think. Chase Brown, I think he's a really good back, and he should be in the second or third round, really. Looking at these picks, probably at the beginning of the third is where Chase Brown should be. Love him out of Illinois. He is an athletic dude, and I'm excited to see if he can get some draft capital. Dwayne McBride at the end here, 4.8. Pretty good pick. I dig it. Dwayne McBride was a pretty good player in college, but very limited in the passing game. So he is going to really be pigeonholed into probably an early down goal line type role, which he could fall into some touchdowns, and maybe, they just didn't use him that way in college. Maybe he could be one of those sleepers. I did like him watching him in college, really hard runner, but I'm going to be surprised if he gets the draft capital. Somebody else was sleeping here at 4.9, Jake Haener. There's just other players to pick. Even though it's super flex, these guys aren't going to be starters in the NFL. So I think we can go a different direction. I love this pick for me at the end of this draft. 4.10, Jaden Reed, wide receiver out of Michigan State. Talked about him on the factory tour as well. Very, very skilled route runner, very talented wide receiver, very quick. I like him a lot. I think he's going to find a role in the NFL. He is a little smaller, but I do think he's 6 foot, so I think he can build into that frame a little bit. Maybe he can gain some weight and not get beat up so much in contested catch situations and whatnot. So obviously with these mocks, you go in and you don't have a really specific strategy because you don't have a real team, but I think you go into this trying to make the best picks possible, and that's really what you do in any rookie draft, right? You're not really going in and picking for need. You should be picking the best players available and trading for need. Obviously that's a tired saying, but it is true. You should really, that is what you should really do. So I think, pre-draft, you obviously get some wonky picks, and in mocks, you get some wonky picks like the JSN pick going before Bryce Young. But I do think some of those things will occur in your real drafts. I don't think that's something that will never happen. So I think this is an interesting example of kind of where some players could go. Some players who I think fell a little too far won't fall that way after the draft. And maybe you can get an idea right now of things you can take advantage of. Obviously, you can go and trade for certain picks and try to get ahead of the curve. You could, try to trade down if you see opportunity for yourself with some of these later round guys. For me, I'm always looking for opportunity to move up. I do think getting into the first and second round, that's really where all the value is. But if I'm at these late stages in the third, fourth rounds, I'm going for guys like Roshan Johnson, Evan Hull, Chase Brown, Marvin Mims, Kendre Miller, Cedric Tillman, who likely won't be that far down. Jaden Reed, Tyler Scott. Those are definitely really good targets to go for. I think one thing we need to really keep in mind is in Superflex leagues, we can't let these quarterbacks fall. That's how you get these Justin Herberts. You don't want to believe in them, and you go for Dalton Kincaid instead, or you go for Michael Mayer instead, or another wide receiver that you could get somewhere else, like I did, Zay Flowers, right? Because I like him so much. But we can't let these guys like Will Levis fall if they get the draft capital. Anthony Richardson shouldn't go further than 1.5 because you don't believe in him if he goes in the top 5 of the NFL draft. Like, you just got to bite the bullet, take these guys, and use their value the best you can, because they're going to have tons of value, and their value is going to rise, and they're going to hold a lot more value than Jahmyr Gibbs and JSN if they don't work out, right? There is a possibility that Jahmyr Gibbs and JSN don't work out. So you really need to be mindful of that. You need to be careful with those picks because you don't want to regret these picks more than you already can when you pick them and they just don't work out because, it happens. So I just don't want to be fading quarterbacks anymore in my Superflex drafts, and I don't want you all to be fading them either. Big shout out to the Dynasty Underdog Discord members for jumping in here and doing this mock draft with me. It was really fun. We made it through pretty quick. So if anybody wants to hop in that Discord, again, I'll link it in the YouTube description and y'all can join in there. And I'll be throwing in more mock drafts over the next couple of weeks and y'all can join in. Hopefully y'all enjoy me going through that. mock draft and just reviewing the picks and going over what I think should and shouldn't happen, and guys that are a little too low and guys that should be going a little bit higher. A lot is going to change over the next couple weeks here as we get more news of what teams are looking to do. And as soon as the NFL draft kicks off, everything's going to change. So I'll probably be doing a couple more of these reviews leading up to the draft, and then definitely going to be doing some post-draft reviews and post-draft mocks. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for that. Join dynastyfootballfactory.com, become an annual member, and you'll get access to the DFF Discord and all of its staff, including myself and everybody else 24/7. So, and with all that said, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time. Peace out.